I know the Callisto Protocol has been out for some time now, and that the game launched to a ton of issues, mainly on PC, but some on Xbox as well. The game also received a great many disappointing reviews. In fact, across the board, it seems YouTubers, journalists, and even a ton of gamers really did not like this game. Now that the game has received several major patches, has had time to digest in people's minds, I figured now is a good time to discuss the game, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But before we take a deep dive into the Callisto Protocol and Jacob's journey through Black Iron Prison, I would like to take a brief moment and welcome anyone new to the channel. If you are new, please consider subscribing. I got a ton of stuff in the works that I'd love to share with you all. Also, if you do happen to enjoy the video, let me know by dropping a like. But anyways guys, we got a lot to get into, so without further ado, let's get into it. So right up front, I want to be honest and perfectly clear. I've only played the PlayStation 5 version of this game. I have heard that the PC version and Xbox version of the game has drastically improved since launch, and Striking Distance Studios has put out more patches trying to correct the technical problems that plagued the launch of the game. However, I cannot personally state if the game is improved on those platforms or not. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's actually get into the game itself. So let's start the review off with what I think caused some of the negative reaction online concerning this game. And that is, everyone wanted a next-gen spiritual successor to Dead Space. And this game is not that at all. I do not blame people for thinking this was going to be a Dead Space-like game either. It is made from the creator of Dead Space. It was marketed as a horror game set in space. The monsters are only killed by chopping off their limbs, just like the necromorphs in Dead Space. The hub style matches the style of the Dead Space games. How could you think this was anything but a next-gen spiritual successor to Dead Space? In fact, the game even tries to capture that classic scene in Dead Space where when you pick up the plasma cutter and it says, "Cut off the limbs," written in blood on the wall. Only in the Callisto Protocol, it says, "Cut off the tentacles," on the wall in random locations multiple times throughout the game. Instead of being in a well-placed location that is relative to the story, it feels like you're playing a multiplayer game and someone has cut off the tentacles logo as their spray option and is just randomly placing it throughout the map. It's like this game wanted to be something different and separate itself from Dead Space, but at the same time it wanted to use the Dead Space legacy as a marketing tool and to generate sales from the pre-existing fan base of the Dead Space series. So if you do end up playing the Callisto Protocol, just remember, if you go in expecting a horror style game, you are going to be very disappointed. So if this is not a horror game, then what is the Callisto Protocol? Well, this is a melee action game with a little gunplay tossed in that has the skin and theme of a horror setting. How could it be possible that a game has a horror theme but not be an actual horror game? Well, look at the original Gears of War. Look at the monsters. Look at the setting and the atmosphere of that world. This is what I would consider a horror theme type of world, but has the gunplay and characters you play as that make it anything but a horror game. So like the Callisto Protocol, I would never call Gears of War an actual horror game. So now that we've established that this is a melee action game, let's discuss the actual combat and gameplay in the game. This is something that's actually very unique. You use the stick to dodge left or right from enemy attacks. Now you would think if the monster was going to hit you with a left hook, you would dodge in the opposite direction. Alas, do not be fooled by this. As a matter of fact, it doesn't matter what direction you press the stick. Jacob will automatically dodge any incoming attacks. Once you figure this out, that you don't even have to time or move the stick in any sort of direction, and Jacob will dodge, the combat becomes ridiculously easy, at least on one-on-one encounters. They're not even a challenge anymore. The only time the game becomes difficult is when you take on multiple enemies at once. And this is where you will begin to fight the hardest opponent and what I would consider the actual boss of the game. And that is the camera system in this game. For a third-person melee game to work, you need to actually be able to see what you're fighting. The camera is so zoomed in on Jacob that he takes up half of the screen and you can't see anything going on unless it's directly in front of you. The field of view is awful in Callisto Protocol. Look at the difference between God of War and Callisto Protocol. In God of War, you could actually see what's going on. It has a much better field of view. This is what Callisto should have had. Pretty much every death I encountered in this game was due to the fact of getting hit by something that was completely next to me, but somehow off screen. Speaking of the monsters being off screen, maybe that's for the better, since if they were on screen more, you would realize even faster that is a rinse and repeat of the same monsters over and over again. I do not understand how the creator of Dead Space, the man behind so many of the incredible Necromorphs design, somehow lacked enemy variety in this game. You end up fighting the same enemies to the point that is rinse and repeat. The monsters you fight in the first couple hours of the game, I hope you enjoyed them, because you will spend your entire playthrough fighting them over and over again throughout the entire story. The only difference is, as you progress, the monsters can evolve into a more powerful form if you do not kill them fast enough. The problem is, the combat does not change when they go into this enhanced form. You still simply dodge and then just counter attack. Once you figure out the pattern, which won't take you long because they all have the same movement pattern, the game goes back to being easy mode until one of them actually hits you off screen and causes you to die. By the way, does anyone else think the new mutation looks like they're just a starfish walking around in pants? Or was that just me? But let's just move on from that. That's just really weird. Now, you would think a terrible camera system, a lack of enemy variety would be enough complaints about the game, but there's actually something else I want to complain about, and that is the fact that you have to crawl through vents, squeeze through pipes or walls, and go through tons of animations that are supposed to hide load screens, that it gets annoying. And honestly, I don't even think this game is hiding load screens. I think this was actually a design choice. I am unsure if they thought this would build tension or made for good set pieces, but going through what feels like 5 vents in a row just to lead to another monster that looks exactly as the last 10 guys you just beat up loses its luster pretty early on. Now, I could go on a rant about the inventory size, the fact that it doesn't even feel like you're in a prison throughout most of the game, or the fact that even the story feels generic. But I feel like that would make this video way too long. So I'm just going to wrap this up and give my overall thoughts. This is a game that very much feels like a 360 PlayStation 3 era game, with the constant squeezing through the cracks in the wall, crawling through vents type of vibe. It is a very linear experience with hardly any exploration. This is a very much point A to point B type of game. Nothing wrong with that. Just know that going into it. There's a vast lack of enemy variety, which is a complete shame. The death animations are not as big deal as the advertisement made it out to be. Even the environmental kills are nothing special. It's basically the generic throwing enemies into a spike wall or tossing them into spinning gears. Nothing unique, something that you have probably seen time and time again in other video games. And don't go in expecting to get a vast array of weaponry. If you're expecting unique weapons such as the plasma cutter or the Ripper, you're also going to be disappointed. You get stuff like a pistol, a baton, a shotgun. Generic weapons is all this game has to offer. Now, having said all this, I don't think this game is simply pure trash. And I don't think it is the most garbage game of all time. I think a lot of people were just simply disappointed with this title. Everyone had such high expectations and wanted this to be the next go in the horror scene. And unfortunately, this game is simply a weekend-sized adventure that will only take you 8 to 10 hours to beat. I would not recommend this game for $70. Definitely wait for a sale. This is something that you will enjoy if you expect a melee game that's not horror based. You're willing to play a game that plays like a 360 era game with very pretty graphics, you might have some fun with this title. But I wouldn't pay more than $30 for this. I hope Striking Distance Studios gets a chance at making a sequel with this IP. I think it's something that does have great potential if properly marketed and finds the correct audience. So hopefully this series just doesn't die and could go on to be something more. But as of right now, overall, this is just a mediocre experience. But I want to hear what you all think. Did you enjoy this game? Are you like me and had fun with the game but still has sort of disappointed with it at the same time? Or do you agree with the vast majority and think the game is just pure trash? Let me know in the comments down below. As for me, I got a ton of work to do, so I'm gonna get back to the grind and I will catch you all next time. Peace.